So this is what we're making, silver conchos with cutler rivets. We're going to make a simple concho for a belt. Now, you can take a disc, a plain disc, put your pattern on it. You can solder bezels on for cabochons, whatever you want, but I like just silver coins held on with a cutler rivet. Now, I am using Australian coins made between 1911 and 1945 because they're sterling silver. You can use Mexican pesos or American silver dollars. Before, I think 64, I'm not sure. Google it to make sure. Now, I've got Sacagawea, 2 Moons Indian Head nickel, 1 cent. These are American, and these are Australian. Now, these are florins, which are 2 shillings. They're roughly the size of a US $half. Now, I'm going to dome this, and because it has a slight dome, it won't catch on the edge when you're putting your belt on. I just want a slight dome, so I'm using a fairly big ball and a wooden dapping block, and wood because that way it won't damage the coin, and I'm hitting the ball with a rawhide hammer so I don't damage the ball. So you can hear it when it hits bottom. And like I say, it's just a slight dome. If you have an older coin, you may have to anneal it before you can dome it because it'll be work hardened from rattling around in your pocket. So for this one, you need to know how thick your leather belt is. So mine is 3.72, it's just under 4 mil. And because this has a dome in it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of chenille, 4 mil long, and I'm going to solder that right in the middle. I'll move in so you can see. So this tubing, chenille, has a 3 millimeter inside diameter. So I've taken 3 millimeter round wire and I've soldered it onto just a small disc that I cut out. It's 1 mil thick. And what will happen when we get this finished is we'll cut a hole in the belt, we'll push this through, then we'll push this in from the other side to hold it all together. Now, I suggest that you put this on a screen, flux it, put 3 little pieces of solder down on the inside, and heat it from the bottom. If you heat it from the bottom, then the solder will flow around the chenille. If you heat it from the top, oftentimes the solder will jump up on the sides of the chenille. So I've fluxed the spot where the chenille sits. I'm just going to drop 3 pieces down inside. I'm doing 2 of these at the same time, but I'll just show you the one. So I'm using a number 7 tip on my mini torch. Pretty good sized flame. And I'm just going to gently warm this up to dry out the flux. Then use my solder pick to push the chenille where I want it. It hasn't moved, so I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm about 75 mil away, 3 inches in the old money, and I'm just circling the coin from underneath. And you can see the coin's oxidizing, the flux is clear, and shortly the solder will flow around like that. So that's a nice solder line right around the chenille. You're done. Quench it, pickle it, tumble it. You don't want to polish it on a wheel. You actually want to tumble it so that you don't erase any of the pattern on the coin. Now, when you're soldering on a screen, be really aware of what is on the screen. You want to make sure that it's nice and clean. Otherwise, you'll get marks on the other side of your piece. Now, I cut my chenille 4 millimeters long because my belt is 4 millimeters thick. And the piece that goes inside, I cut 3.5 millimeters long because I don't want it to bottom out. I want it to actually squeeze against the belt and stop before it gets to the bottom of the piece. So now 3 millimeter diameter wire, cut it 3.5 millimeters long, and just solder it to whatever you want the inside piece to be. You can put a pattern on this. You could, if you wanted, use a small coin, like threepence would be good for that. Use whatever you want. You could actually cut this into a shape if you wanted. It doesn't have to be round. But it does have to have the wire the same size as the inside diameter of your tubing. At this point, I'm putting a hole in my belt. If you have a leather hole punch, great. If you don't, you can drill the hole. Just make sure you drill between your fingers. Don't drill into your finger. Now, the outside diameter of my tubing is 4 mil, and so I'm making a hole in the belt 4 mil. Here's our concho, nice and shiny out of the tumbler. A couple of words. When you're annealing or soldering sterling, when it turns black, and you put it in the pickle and it comes out that dull silver, that's fine silver on the surface. If you polish that in a tumbler, it just burnishes it, it doesn't remove it, and it'll make it shiny. If you polish it on Tripoli, on a wheel, it'll take that fine silver coating off and you'll have fire scale. When you have an intricate pattern on a piece of metal, you can't really get rid of the fire scale by continuing to polish, or you'll completely erase your pattern, which is why when I do this type stuff, I pickle it, I have that dull silver coating, I tumble it, and that way it keeps the pattern and it makes it nice and shiny. So we're ready to put this on the belt now, and what I do is I line it up with the hole, I make sure it's pointing the right direction, and then I push the hole in the belt down over the chenille. Yep, so it will look like this. I'll zoom in. So you can just see the end of this, the tubing. Now what I want to do is I want to put just a small drop of 5-minute epoxy on this, and I'll push that in and it'll be set. So just a small amount of epoxy on a toothpick, and I don't really put it in the hole all that much, but I put it on the edge of the hole. Put your rivet in place, and that it shouldn't be super tight, but it should be snug, and then I just tap it with my rawhide hammer to make sure that it's seated, and that's it. That's our concho. You can still turn this if it's not quite where you want it. You'll always be able to turn it, but it's now semi-permanent. Done deal.